Hey, y'all.
How are y'all doing? Good. Good. Three real girls.
It's getting that last
So all four of you are here.
Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rains come tumbling down. Pulling weeds, picking stones, we are made of dreams and bones. Need a spot to call my own, for the tide is close at hand. Rain, sun, rain, find my way in nature's chain. Tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rains come tumbling down. Plant your row, short or long, seasoned with a cheerful song. Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her loving care. Old crow watching from a tree, God is hungry, I ought to be. In my garden I was free as that feathered thief up there. Inch by inch, row by row, inch by inch, row by row. Please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down.
Good morning. Always nice to start off with Pete Seeger, right? I'm Robert, and Richard and I will be leading the service today. Welcome to the Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, which is located on occupied ancestral land of the Muskogee Nation and housed in a building constructed by free, formerly enslaved African Americans. We gather here with humility, honoring those who came before us. We gather here seeking something larger than ourselves, a spirituality that will give our lives meaning and the opportunity to contribute to peace and justice in this world. We extend a special welcome to those of you who are visiting or still are getting acquainted with this community, and who are looking for a place to call a spiritual home. We hope that you feel welcomed and accepted here just as you are. We invite you to join us in our mission to build a welcoming and caring community dedicated to challenging the mind, nurturing the spirit, and transforming the world through the pursuit of truth, love, and justice. And if you would like to introduce yourselves, you can, or not. If you are new, we invite you to add your name and contact information to our visitor log on the other end of the church, which means back there, near the greeters, so you can receive our weekly email newsletter. You may also request this online at auuf.org/visitor. We are a very active congregation, so watch the newsletter, order of service, and the website for announcements of activities you may be interested in. Now, as we begin our service, please turn off your phone or any other electronic devices. And now's the time I get to change stuff, okay? So when you are in charge of a service, you can change stuff. That's good. So, a couple things. Part of the service is going to be talking about our bounty. So as you can see, some of the bounty is up here already. If you have stuff in the back and you want to talk about it and bring it up during the offertory, as that's going around, if you want to go back and pick it up and bring it up front so that you could talk about it, that would be great. So don't worry about that, that's fine. Also, in terms of logistics, if you look at the program, and Zenda did a great job of taking it yesterday, not on Thursday, like she says she's supposed to get it. My Thursdays tend to extend a couple days. So what we're doing is this. We're going to follow the program for our bounties 1 and 2, and then we're going to do our bounties 3 and 4 during the service part. And it'll act like a primer, okay? Because I know some of you are kind of, shy and everything. I don't want to talk, but we do want you to talk. And so that'll prime you to get you ready and psych you so you can. Okay. And yeah, so please bring it to the altar. And I want to thank Amy for this wonderful altar, this gardening thing. So it adds so much when we have altars that reflect what our services are. If we could have someone. Oh, they did? Oh, okay. Then.
Our opening words are presented by our soil expert, Kirk Iverson, who will tell us about soil preparation. You're up, Kirk.
Okay. Wow. Good morning. On behalf of the soil, I'd like to make our appreciation for being the prime word, I guess. But I think my point today would be it's all a cycle, and all the parts of it are together, and they're all important. So we have to start somewhere, so we're starting with the soil. As far as our food and our bounty, Soil's, like every other part of it, very important. The sun we have to acknowledge for giving us almost all of the energy of this that runs the system. And the air provides some things like carbon dioxide mostly, that is a huge part of the system too, and kind of the basis of it all. But the rest of it really comes to the plants through the soil. Some of the stuff like nitrogen is in the air, but it goes through the soil and gets converted into something the plants can use. And then they take it out. And a lot of the minerals, almost all the minerals are in the soil. And a lot of the biological amino acids and all that kind of stuff are made in the soil, and they work their way into the plant through the roots. So soil's a good place to start. We can see differences in different kinds of soil. Soils that are abused don't give you good plants. Soils that are nurtured give you better plants. There's a saying that you are what you eat. That goes for plants too. They are what they eat, which is mostly from the soil. So how do you keep your soil healthy? You try to protect it, and you try to feed it. To protect it, don't dig it any more than you have to. Of course, you have to do some digging. If you got potatoes, you got to do a lot of digging. But don't do digging just for the heck of it. It doesn't serve any purpose except to damage the soil. Another way to protect the soil is keep something on the top all the time, either living plant or dead plants, mulch. If you put mulch on your soil, on your garden, that's protecting the soil. You can grow a lot of cover crops during the winter or odd times in the summer and leave them on the surface when they die, and they protect the soil. They keep the temperature moderated. They reduce evaporation. If it's plant material, it eventually breaks down. Some of it goes into the soil. Some of it just feeds organisms on the surface of the soil. But you've got to, one thing we always have to remember is that the soil is a living ecosystem, and there's just as much life underneath the soil as there is on top of the soil, on the plants you grow. You've got to nurture the roots. You can nurture the roots by feeding them, compost, fertilizer if you have to. Sometimes you have to. It's like a medicine, I guess. If you got a problem in the soil, maybe you have to add something. But if you feed the plant residue back into the soil as compost or something, then you've almost got a continuing system. So it's the whole cycle thing. If you want to feed the soil, one way to feed the soil is to always have something growing in the soil. The soil gets its nutrients from plants. Plants have waste matter just like animals do. The waste matter in plants comes through the roots. And you'll find most of the bacteria in the soil are living on the plant roots, eating that stuff up. And then other things are eating them. It's a big cycle. So if you stop growing in, say, the winter, the soil's not getting fed, but those guys in the soil are still hungry. So if you want to keep the system working, you feed it all the time. If you've got tomatoes in the summer, cover crops in the winter would be one way to do it, or grow something else. Keep that cycle going. Don't till the soil again, because you're cutting off the fungal mycelia that actually infect the plant roots, and they pump nutrients and water and chemical signals into the roots, and the plants can communicate with each other through these fungal mycelia. And plants over here getting attacked by some kind of pest, plants over here know about it from this network that's going on, the original internet. And these plants will start making compounds that will resist these pests before the pests get to them and help out with that. And finally, the last thing to nurture the soil is to make a diversity of things in the soil, things growing in the soil. Don't grow tomatoes year after year after year. Mix it up. Take 2-year period and count how many different plants you got growing. Tomatoes, peppers, corn. Cover crop each year. Is it one species of cover crop or several species of cover crop? Give it a balanced diet. We like a balanced diet, so do they. We can test the soil and see that different plants support different microbial populations. If you got nothing but tomatoes, there's a certain microbial population there. You got peppers, it's a certain population. You rotate them together, then you've got a mixture of things. Does that help your plant yield? We don't know. We can't measure that yet. But every year we seem to be coming up with more ways to describe what's going on. So that's my point. It's all a big system. All the parts are important, and to have a healthy people, you need to have healthy plants, you need to have a healthy soil.
We light our chalice to plant the seed of reflection and anticipation, much like how we anticipate the seeds of our garden. This is going to take a while. Seeds in our continent, the seeds started about 10,000 years ago, give or take a few thousand years, in what is now Mexico. A Native American woman on her foraging expedition noticed a small weed, teosinte by name, which had a little seed head on the top of it about that big. She took one home, tasted kind of good, planted it. She realized that she could plant it and make more, and sure enough, and a couple of thousand years later, in the 1500s, when Spanish conquistadors started invading the Americas, corn as we know it was scattered throughout the Americas, Central and South of Central America and North America. So maize was the foundation of civilizations of the Olmec, Inca, and Mayan empires, as well as all the Native Americans of the Southeast. Further south in Peru, potatoes were the basis of their civilization. So the ultimate harvest starts with the seed, and each grain or kernel held the promise of the next generation, and the generations beyond that. The continuous effort of primitive breeders ensured that the next generation had higher yields, was more disease resistant, and was more nutritious. We also light a candle to acknowledge the suffering in the world. We cry for those individuals and families at our southern border who are separated from loved ones. May our elected leaders work with good faith to develop policies that reflect the dignity and worth of everyone seeking a better life for themselves and for their children, free from terror and deprivation. We also lament the ongoing tragedy in the Middle East, where the latest war has separated and killed innocent civilians and caused unfathomable destruction of homes, hospitals, and historical infrastructure. One of the ways we care for the community is by sharing our joys, concerns, and milestones. We begin with a silent sharing and invite you one at a time to drop a pebble in our communal bowl. Andrew will provide the musical meditation. you have a brief joy, concern, or milestone you'd like to share with the congregation, please come to the front and use the microphone. Please maintain social distancing. Coming to the microphone after the person in front of you has finished. If you are joining virtually, please share your reflection in the YouTube chat box.
Oh, well. Some of you've noticed that. Okay, help me. Just make it so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I know my hearing. Oh, hearing aids. Okay. You, Ralph. I'm Carolyn Levy, and I have missed a lot of Sundays this summer. We have had to, as we say in the South, hunker down. Our daughter-in-law has been diagnosed with a brain tumor. So on Sunday mornings, we have gathered comfort food, breakfast, being together. My grandsons have been flying in and out. Now that's the scary part. Here's the good part. It is not cancer. It is big. She's had it for a long time. The surgery is going to be done in Vanderbilt. She's flown to San Diego to talk to them. And the guys at Vanderbilt trained under the physicians in San Diego who know about all this stuff. But anyway, the problem is the surgery is touchy. She will lose her hearing. It's behind her ear. And all the facial muscles on her right side are swallowed up inside that tumor. So that's why the surgery is going to take at least 15 hours. And because she's a CrossFit queen, you know, she founded that thing out at Moore's Mill, CrossFit thing, and she didn't notice it. Because if you exercise and really exercise, she's been able to compensate. They think she's had it about 15 years because it's so large. But anyway, that's why I'm not here, and there may be other Sundays in the future. She has surgery in September that I won't be here. But it's not, I have missed y'all more than you will ever know. But when I got summoned to the breakfast brigade out there, I went. Because it's time for us to gather as a family. And I just want everybody to know where I've been. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris. This is Evie. We're going to be on the playground during the program, so we just wanted to share quickly our bounty, which is a whole bunch of basil from our humble garden. We used it to make some pesto pasta for potluck, and then we brought some more along with some Maggies. So if you want to take some fresh basil home, please do. We have way more than we can use, so we will just set it here on the table.
I'm Cindy Renke, and I thought I'd bring a piece of joy. We sometimes despair about community and coming together. My aunt turned 95 on July 1st, and her three daughters had planned for her to go back to Maine, where she had lived for at least 60 years until she couldn't stay here anymore and moved down to Rhode Island with one of her daughters for a celebration, but she fell and broke her tailbone, so she couldn't do it. So they came up with the idea of having people send her birthday cards, hoping to get 95. As of her birthday, and I haven't heard an update since, she had 165 cards.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Richard, Robert, Marty in their absence, everybody. We had a milestone recently at the tumor sit-in, 1,500 days. Yesterday was the 1,504th day. I didn't go, but we're still counting down the days. We'd like to thank every one of you who have thought about us and your thoughts and prayers, and even for those who have challenged us and hated on us. We thank them too. Thank you.
I'm Jim. And I want to share my joy also. I went to Margaret's this week and picked a whole bunch of figs, and then took half of them over to Gene Hunter because their fig trees all died a couple of years ago from some disease. And they were overjoyed, so to repay me, they gave me, I don't know, maybe 60 or 80 tomatoes and some basil. So I made a tomato salad for kids.
Step back a little bit. Yeah, I'm Noriko. I have a concern. It's a public information. Some of you may have seen it on the Friday OA News, Auburn Opelika News. The Misha and Leah, my daughters, our daughters, have really enjoyed it. The singing group in the middle school, and teacher Mr. McCullough was great. And he taught me music, but he also did that singing group, and then also did the traffic control morning and afternoon. And his name was on the first page of the OA News on Friday morning, and that was about his being LGBTQ role model, having a podcast outside of the class, and that he was not professional in the parents' eyes. So there are a few parents who went to the board meeting and then complained, and then Mr. McCullough sent a resignation letter the next day. That's what the OA News was saying. And Leah, Misha was out of town, but we were just really saddened to hear that, which he has been a really great role model. And he was probably, a lot of you know him in Pride of the Plane. He was MC many times, so we were thinking about how we can kind of send words of support and that sort. But if anybody heard about that, please let me know. We'd like to. Thank you.
I have a joy and a concern. The good news is my daughters, both of them, and my granddaughter will be visiting next week. The bad news is I'll be undergoing infusion chemotherapy for metastatic prostate cancer, so you'll be seeing a change in me in the coming weeks. I'm sure some of you have had chemotherapy. I'd love to hear your stories, and we can commiserate. If you're a gentleman over 40, when you have your annual blood test, you should have a PSA, prostate-specific antigen test, that should return a value in the low single digits. When that number starts to go up, be prepared for a whole lot of additional testing, and it's not fun. May all the joys, concerns, and milestones this morning, both silent and spoken, be uplifted by this community and our common humanity. We're going to have the giving of a plate by Connor.
Okay. Yeah, good. Hi everyone, Connor, Social Action. Time flies. Second Sunday, giving you the plate. This is another nomination that we took back in March for organizations we'd like to support. So this month it's the Auburn chapter of PFLAG. It's an organization we've supported before, an organization we'll continue to support in the future, I'm sure. They believe in the equality, they believe in the importance of diversity and equality through education, advocacy, and support. They're investing in a future where our differences are celebrated. So that's our organization this month. see you next second Sunday. This is Olive too, by the way. Who I'm sure you know. Okay, thanks.
The Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship is a very active and vibrant with uplifting and inspiring mission to make a difference in this world. The members and friends of this fellowship shower our time, energy, creativity, imagination, vision, talents, and skills. As important, we contribute financially to provide needed resources beyond our time and energy. This morning, we invite you to contribute as generously as you are able to support our mission. You may donate online via PayPal at auuf.org/donate. If you are writing a check, make your check payable to AAUF. You can drop it in the offering bowl or mail it to P.O. Box 659 Auburn 36831. Please note whether your donation is for your pledge or a general offering. If this is your first time with us, please allow the offering basket to pass you by. Your being with us is a gift. The offering will now be received with gratitude. Our next words will represent how we tend our bounty and will be presented by Noriko Oy. No. Switch to Plan D. Our moment for all ages will be presented by Amy Kaiser.
I'm gonna just pull a chair up here, so all young people or people who feel young be ready. Oh, thank you.
Okay. How many of you all have a garden? Oh, wow. You too? Oh, wow. Yay, everyone. Name one thing you planted or is growing. Cabbage. Tomatoes.
Lots of basil.
Lots of basil. Oh, that's right here on this table. What are you growing? Mint. Mint, basil, tomatoes, cabbage. You gotta get something different from your helpers here. Squash. Wow. Well, this book is very short. It's a poem by one of my favorite writers. It's called The Everyday Garden. So I want you to see if what Cynthia Ryan puts in her garden is the same as what you put in your garden. Okay? So you're listening for mint. You're listening for lots and lots and lots of basil. listening for tomatoes, you're listening for cabbage, and oh gosh, Chris, gosh, everyday life. The everyday garden has a strawberry patch, a bee plant, a round bug, and a worm. There's a bug. Anyone have bugs in their garden? Yeah. And where's that one? And there's one. And worms? No one goes. So all throughout, Cynthia Ryland drew the illustration so there's always a worm and always a bug. So keep your eye on where they are. There are big red tomatoes the worm or the bug. The worm crawling up the tomato plants. See the bug? There you go. There's the bug. There are big red tomatoes on a thick wooden pole and an angel the wind loves to turn. I think the angel is probably the wind indicator. It spins round and round. There are blackbirds at morning and rabbits at night and butterflies all in between. Okay, see the bug or the worm. The worm's hard to spot. That's a little easier sometimes. Anyone have butterflies in their garden? Anyone else? The corn will grow yellow, the raspberries red, and the peas a bright summer green. Okay, there's bug, there's worm, there's worm. The everyday garden likes sunshine, of course. Oh, okay. And it loves a long, wet, rainy day. And when all the carrots decide to stop growing, it gives all its carrots away. Yeah. And that's it. So, there we go.
May your minds be open to new learning. May your words bring truth into the world. May your hearts know love and your hands do justice as you go your ways. As you go your ways. As you go your ways.
So revised program. So we heard from Kirk how we tend the soil, and then we heard from Richard that we need the seed, and then next we need to tend. And Marika's going to talk about that.
Morning again. My name is Nariko, and I am talking about tending. So the Kirk covered a lot of things about tending as well. And for me, I'm just limiting my talk on the vegetable growing only today, because trees are pretty self-sustainable in many ways. And so I'm just again talking about vegetables. And then first of all, when to plant. When you have a seedling, so whether you bought it from the store or you plant it on a little seed pot yourself, when to plant? Was it too early? The frost got through, or too late? Now probably late July, early August, a little too hot for the seed to germinate at this time in Alabama. So again, think about the timing of it. Then next point would be, who are you going to plant with? The companion plants. You probably don't want to have a beautiful flowers next to the cabbage family, because then the caterpillars want to just land on it. Yeah, and then also maybe basil with tomatoes. That would be good companion plants. And in the cycle, Kirk talked about cycle, maybe after the nitrogen-rich roots of the beans, maybe you wanted to put something that used nitrogen or that require more nitrogen. So thinking about the little planting. And then location. Do they need a lot of sun, or do they do not want a lot of sun? How about drainage? How about the soil, type of soil? And some of them do great in a clay soil, some of them really don't. So then think about the location and then support when they started to grow. Do you want to give a little support, like a cage, maybe stake, maybe a little one pole, maybe net, for the beans, climbing beans? Then you kind of have to think about, is that too much support? Do you damage the plant when you put the support on there? And then when they're growing, for example, like tomato, when they're growing, usually the little shoot come from the branches, right? From the main branch and then the side branch, main stalk and the side branch. Should you pick or should you not pick? How about cucumbers? They do the same. There's a main stalk, and then you have so many branches coming. Which one are you going to pick to get the best yield? So there's a lot of stories, a lot of YouTubes, a lot of books about it. I usually take those shoots out, and the cucumbers, I usually take the ground kits. They say ground shooting, the third one. I'm gonna take that out too. Okay, and then also nutrients. Once they started growing, especially when they started to make a little fruits out of it, do you want it to give fertilizers? Every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, or maybe never. Some plants like fertilizers, some plants don't want it so much. Same with the water. Some of them love water, some of them don't. On the back of the Service of Order, there was evidence, garden is evidence of faith. To me, garden, especially vegetable garden, is a reflection of education and a reflection of human development, or animal development you can call, because it's the same. For me, did I put the kids out a little too soon for that situation? Were they prepared? Do they want a lot of hugging? Do they want the verbal encouragement? Some kids just don't want a lot of that. Some kids just want just a little tiny bit of encouragement, just want to be left alone. Like orchids, they don't want a lot of attention. They just want to be admired. But if you put too much water, too much sun, they don't want it. And they're going to, going to decline. Companion plants. Did they have good friends? Did they have a good support system with them? So all of these things just make me wonder when we see next generation of, next generation, did we support enough? We just needed one stake rather than the cage, like overprotection. So for me, it's a reflection of education and again, human development. Thank you.
Well, Noriko really made it sound really good. And she didn't use the word weed once. That's what I'm attending. Okay, our fourth bounty is being presented by Becky.
Hi there. So most of you know I grew up in a house in Michigan on a street called Laughlin Drive. Some of you have heard that name before. The same house that my grandma grew up in and the same house that my mom grew up in. And both my mom and my grandma were big gardeners. And so by the time my family moved back into the house after my grandparents died, the gardens were like generations old and they had all these old flowers that had, lived there forever. And so my mom used to brag about how old her garden was because it was really beautiful. She used to tell me she had these plants called hollyhocks, these really tall plants that she said were brought over here from Hungary by my grandfather's mother, I think, or something like that. So I still think it was the prettiest garden in the world. So I remember when I was young, both my grandma and then my mom working in the garden every weekend, And when they did, the neighbors would stop by and they would chat because there were a whole bunch of other families on Laughlin Drive that had lived in the neighborhood for generations. So for example, the next door neighbor, his name was Jerry Wachowski. He and my mother had literally lived next door to each other for like 70 years. And when he was like 5 or 6, when both my mom and Jerry were young, he used to chase her around the neighborhood with these tall beans that fell off this tree. We used to call it the bean tree. I don't know what it was called, but it was down the road. So in the garden, they shared flowers, they shared memories, they shared stories. So sometimes I think that going out in the garden for my mom wasn't just because it needed weeding or it needed gardening, but it was because she just liked to hang out in the front yard and chat with the neighbors. So it was kind of like part of her community. So when I moved into our current house on Gardner Drive, just behind us, we didn't have a garden at first. And so my friend Sharon Roberts, who some of you know, asked me if I wanted to split a plot at the community garden on campus. And so we started spending our Saturday mornings at the community garden. And that garden also was definitely about community. On one side of us, we had the wife of the COSAM dean. I don't know her name, that's why I'm calling her a wife. I wouldn't normally call her that. And on the other side, we had this engineering professor, and there were a whole bunch of other families with kids who spent their days there too. So I learned all this stuff from the people around me. I learned from Sharon that you can just cover a garden with boxes and newspaper instead of actually weeding, which was this major epiphany in my life. I learned, this is important, that you cannot plant sweet corn and Indian corn right next to each other. I learned that the hard way. And from the wife of the COSAM dean, that's what I learned from her. The engineering professor went out of town all the time, and he basically gave us all of his tomatoes because he was going out of town like when the tomatoes were ripening. And Sharon, as some of you know, told very long, very meandering, very detailed stories to all of us. So after Sharon moved to Oregon, I finally built a garden at home, and this a couple years later. During the pandemic, I had this huge amount of lettuce, and Amy Kaiser started coming over to pick lettuce for a bunch of people, to deliver to people. So she was doing grocery shopping for Conrad, and she was delivering lettuce to him. She delivered it to Amy and Peter, or Emily and Peter, and Emily's mom, I believe, Kitty, and some other people who lived close by us. So this was in like the very first few weeks of the pandemic, when everything was super stressful. Shannon had been laid off, and the kids were out of school and driving me crazy. I was afraid that my less than healthy lungs were gonna not survive COVID, which I thought I was gonna get like immediately. And every time Amy stopped by to pick lettuce, I was super excited, and I ran out there and we chatted from across the garden. And so we also created like a little bit of community in my front yard. And later, after the pandemic, I also found community in gardening again, and this time with bees. My friend Meadows asked me if I wanted to do bees together, and I was super excited to say yes. She had taken a bee class, but we both basically learned it together, and we continue to do so. Bees kind of have their own community, not unlike people. They work in a collective. They share their bounty. They have they're full of awesome, empowered women. I won't say too much about the men. You don't want to know what happened to male bees. They each have an important job, and they have very complex relationships, and they live in a community. So the bees kind of have their own sort of version of my own gardening experience. Thanks.
So there you have it. And I want to thank all 4 of our presenters because they all picked up on something important in terms of our bounty. From looking at nutrients and seeds, to looking at companionship, generations, community, both plant and people, all these things working together. And I guess you can figure out what we're going with this, right? I mean, aren't we a garden? That's what we're trying to say. So now is a little time for sharing with food from our bounty. And I just want to do number one since I'm up here. And in the bowl over here, I have what are known as Terry's potatoes. Many years ago, probably more than 20, I came across a recipe with red potatoes that included, olive oil and lemon juice and oregano and salt and pepper, and you just roast these potatoes in the oven. And for some reason, Terry came by one time and said, "I love these potatoes." And every potluck since then, I brought these potatoes. And it was, when we stopped at COVID, that was really one of the worst things for me, health, but it was Terry's potatoes stopped. And then now again, it's been picked up again. And one thing too is that they're in a bowl. And this particular bowl was made by Potter Gary Wagner, who used to teach at Auburn University. And my potatoes got associated with Gary's bowl. And Jack and Suzanne used to be a former president of us, would help with potluck. And they always knew when I brought Gary's bowl, it had Terry's potatoes. So that's one of the things. And then a couple months ago, some kids ate the potatoes and started chanting. They love potatoes. So anyway, from our bounty. So who is next? Terry, did you have?
I do have a little story to share. It has to do with harvest. My first husband and I moved to Waverly, Alabama, when my daughter Jessica was 2 years old. We lived in a house that was built in the 1920s with a front porch, a screen porch on the side, and a nice big garden in the backyard. Nice people, nice life. I loved living in Waverly. I could walk to the small grocery store that used to be there and the post office. We lived there for 10 years. One of the nice things that happened was the time that a music group came to Auburn. There used to be a student group called the Auburn Performing something or another, and they brought people like Ike and Tina Turner, the Rolling Stones. I went to all of these concerts back then. They don't do that anymore, but anyway, this time there was a singing group, not as famous as some, named Chad and Jeremy. Does anyone remember Chad and Jeremy? You're not old enough. Well, anyway, if you're around my age, you might be familiar with them. But it just so happened that the day after I saw them, I was walking in downtown Auburn, and there walking next to me was one of the musicians whom I had noticed in the band. Well, I was delighted. We started talking, and I ended up inviting him to come out to my house in Waverly. And he did. And I fed him lunch. And I walked him out into the garden in my backyard. The thing that really amazed him was that I was barefooted. I guess people in Los Angeles do not go barefooted. But he did seem to be really amazed. So that's my story.
Okay, I heard it goes about Lincoln County. Out here. And some of you know that I frequently bring this vegan stew thing that I learned from my late wife. And I got with it incorporates mainly a couple of different varieties of beans and corn. And I got thinking, well, also the local people, the Native Americans who lived here, those were two of the three sisters, the other one being squash. And the way they would plant it would be to
plant the corn, and then plant the beans immediately around that, so the bean vines could climb up the corn stalks. Then they would plant squash all around that because the leaves and stems of the squash are all prickly, and deer and rabbits kind of don't like to go through all that to get to the corn and the beans. And of course, the bonus, the beans provide a lot of nitrogen in the soil that the corn really eats up. So by planting the three things together, for one thing, they didn't have to plow up the entire garden area, and for another, it sort of kept the soil going for more years than just simple slash and burn and plant would have. And so I popped up a squash, actually a zucchini, which is kind of cheating because squash originated in the Americas, and then some of it got taken over to Italy, where the Italians came up with a type of squash that's green and shaped different, but still tastes like squash. So I use that because I like the color better. And so anyway, but unfortunately it's not vegan anymore because I use some butter in fixing the zucchini. So if you're a strict vegan, it's still mostly vegetarian, but not fully vegan. It is still gluten-free, and so if you're not a really strict vegetarian, you can, not a strict vegan, you can still eat it. But if you have a moral or physical objection to eating butter, you might want to give it a pass.
Did you see it all? Well, I've been gardening for decades, and my husband took a master gardener's course, and then everything went boom because he really learned how to do it. And one of the things that he learned how to do fairly good was grow tomatoes. And I sort of have directions for growing tomatoes, and I wrote a 4-line poem about it. It's called Directions. It takes decay, dirt, and bullshit sitting out in the pouring rain and the hot July sun to make a tomato.
You have time for one more? Yeah. You sure? Cindy, are you going up? Yeah. We have one more.
When I read about what the service was being about, what I thought about was not garden produce, but produce that we got from the land around us when we were kids. I grew up in central Connecticut, so the timing of this would be different from down here. But beginning of June, which is my older sister's my birthday, if we were lucky, we could go out in the back and find wild strawberries, enough to put on the top of our cake. In July, the thimbleberries would be ripe. Thimbleberries are sort of like a combination of raspberry and blackberry and grow in thickets. And we could go up the hill and crawl through the thickets and pick thimbleberries. And then beginning of August, which is where my dad's vacation always was, then we would go camping in northern New England, and blueberries would be ripe. And the big thing for this was my dad always wore a hat because he was blue-eyed, blonde, and bald. And there was a hole on the top of the hat he wore in the summer. And the first thing we had to do was find a blueberry big enough to close that hole. And then we could collect a whole hat full of blueberries.
Okay. I brought my plant. This is turmeric. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go back there in just a second. So isn't that interesting? So where is the turmeric? It's the rhizome. Can you hear too much, Terry? Is that better? Okay. So this is so fun. I am a new gardener, a pathetic gardener, but I'm so in love with plants. I cannot tell you. They are my pets. And trees and plants and green, but I can't make it green. Kirk is trying to help. I have others trying to help, but it is a science. Just hearing all of you today, it is a science, and it's a method, and it's, yes. And I see Brian there who just performs amazingly. Well, wait, I might get there. So anyway, turmeric is my thing, and it's a passion for me. And in December, I will harvest for you the rhizome, and I will coat you in yellow. It's just a wonderful, magnificent, anti-inflammatory herb. And it has magic, and to grow it, I grow it in rows thanks to Judy Collins, who gave me her rhizomes. I dug them up, brought them down 75 miles south. Kirk helped me with the soil. The macho men dug them up. It's beautiful, and they're growing, and they're magnificent. And I'm going to have a harvest of turmeric in 2024. It is not Project 2025, it is Project. Namaste. So turmeric. And if you want to say,
corn. My stepmother grew up in Waverly, Alabama, and she was an only child and learned to garden and was an incredible cook. I don't know if any of you ever knew Jim. And she had a way of bringing people together to help her do things. So every year she would buy bushels of corn, and we would all sit out on the patio and cut the corn off, and then she'd blanch it and freeze it. And it was when at the market at Town Creek, those people bring that truckload of corn. So I got some corn yesterday and cooked.
Now, I didn't bring anything here today, but I want to tell you that not long ago, I think it was either Carl or Jerry, I think they grew some plants here, and we were asked to pick up a plant, and I took one, and I put it in the community garden where I live. It's grown some. I mean, it hasn't produced any fruit yet, but it's grown up. And then there's another plant that I got from Auburn First Baptist Church, and some of the branches are not sprouting anything. Then all of a sudden, a little green sprout pops up out of nowhere. And I'm still trying to learn how to garden. So if you can encourage people to go into community gardening, that would help a lot. And I think it would help bring community to the people who need to get into community. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for sharing. Our closing words are also in the back of the program, reflecting the July touchstone of faith, which I think is a really cool quote from Luther Burbank. A garden is evidence of faith. A garden is evidence of faith. We extinguish our chalice of community, the fire community.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Please stay after the service for coffee, tea, water, followed by potluck today. Are there any announcements?
Huge work party next Saturday, the 27th, in the evening around 5 o'clock. We'll take care of some of the overgrown vegetation and do a few fence repairs around the playground. It'll be a good time. Come if you don't need to work, if you come to the party. Just come to the party, and that'd be good enough.
Is that next Saturday or that's 2 Saturdays?
Next Saturday, the 27th. 2 Saturdays from last night.
Next Saturday's the 21st. 20th.
Next Saturday, this Saturday is the 20th, right? Or the 21st. So
we're the 14th. Today's the 14th. Next Saturday will be 20th. You're saying the 27th.
That's right.
That's 2 Saturdays.
2 Saturdays from yesterday.
Yes.
There we go.
Come every Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, that would be it.
Randy.
I just wanted to shout out to the tomato growers in my world. That is really loud. So I want to thank Ann Bush and Carl Backman for starting the tomato seeds, and we got little plants that Ralph graciously accepted, and then he has been growing them, and now we've been eating them. So thanks. I'm not.
Good morning, everyone. Randy Millius here. I've got a few separate announcements I need to make, but I'm going to try and make them as brief as possible. First is that I'm rising today to give voice to our very own Congregational Support Committee. Our current group consists of Reverend Marty, Peter, Emily, Noriko, Sally, and myself. We meet monthly via Zoom to share notes on any current situations within the fellowship, prepare for upcoming events, and review our own best practices and how we operate. Our committee wanted to make it known that while Reverend Marty was on her well-earned her time, that there is a system in place to support you and your loved ones. In these trying times we're living in, there are resources all around you to lean on. Our mission is to uplift our members and friends the best we are able to during their time of need. We will always honor your confidentiality and dignity in everything that we do to support each other. So if you or a loved one who are in a bad place currently, please reach out to us as you see fit for a sympathetic and understanding ear. The next is in lieu of the events yesterday afternoon in Pennsylvania. If you haven't heard, the UUA has made a public statement and an announcement concerning the events that unfolded. I personally want to align myself with the announcement that they've made, and also high hopes that the fellowship as well will participate, as these do represent our core values and our mission and everything that brings us together under one roof. So I'll just read the announcement verbatim and let it sit with you if you haven't heard about it yet. The announcement goes, Unitarian Universalism believes in the right of free speech and the democratic process. Attacks like those on Saturday's political rally weaken democracy, and the Unitarian Universalist Association condemns this attack. At a time when democracy is already at risk, these events will only make our political environment more precarious. As we prepare to meet this moment, we must return to our spiritual grounding and faithful practices. Take a breath, reflect together, wait for the emerging truth over quick speculation. Anchor yourself in communities and relationships that foster resilience, liberation, and strategy. Cultivate nuance and seek out deep wisdom, political analysis, and spiritual grounding as misinformation will be rampant. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition is rooted in the values of human dignity, justice, compassion, and the democratic principles we all hold dear. We will remain vigilant in our commitment to protecting our democracy and the integrity of its principles and the rights of all its people. Let us keep love at the center. We are in this together. The last statement is a new event that, well, speaking as board president, a new thing that we have started recently is making space and time available for board issues. We will attempt to do this at the beginning of every board meeting. The inclusion for our members who wish to speak publicly about their concerns, suggestions, or approval of the board's actions and initiatives are what we seek out. In the spirit of openness and transparency, we want to make ourselves available to all the members and friends of this fellowship. Two caveats.